sitting on the terrace, and I was telling a short story about when we were doing a webinar a couple of years ago. It was an Austrian guy who was doing some services to enhance email deliveries. So we did not know how to advertise this, and we found a funny Austrian song, like a traditional song, which is like, hee-ha, the post is da, you know? So that's really funny. But we found another one, another traditional German song, which says like, trink, 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 my Freund, lassen Sie Sorgen zu Haus. It's like, drink, 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 my friend, leave the problems behind. So quickly, Paula, how inventions work, said that there might be maybe an invention coming up, a slots game that says, spin, 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 my friend, leave the problems behind. So that's not about responsible gambling, right?
I can't believe you just outed me on that.
Yeah,
that was a private conversation.
No worries, no worries. Everything stays private in here. But it was fun to see that everybody just jumped along. And there were songs coming out like hit me with your best spin and stuff like that. So yeah, inventions on slots games can be like that. Because they were talking about UX and how games change. So let's talk about, of course, serious stuff, because I'm a serious person. So, Paula and Stanislav, in regulated markets, player activity is closely monitored, right? And they are monitoring especially the signs for problem gambling. This is regulated markets. So, Paula, you start first, Stanislav second. What are the key data points or behavior patterns that online casinos should focus on when building machine learning models for early detections? Mindway AI is an award-winning company now.
Absolutely. I think we've won 9 awards this year, with the one yesterday making it the 9th, so we're very proud of that. So this is a huge question. What is it in the player data that we should be looking for? But I just want to take it back a little bit first and just explain when we say player data what we're actually looking at, because people often think we're sort of looking at personal data, and that's not the case. What we do is we take the spin level data from the operator and we look for signs of problematic play within that spin level data. So what we're talking about here is 10-minute by 10-minute sessions for casino play, betting slip by betting slip for sportsbook. And what we're doing is we're looking at things like the sort of time spent gambling, deposits, we're looking at the time of day people are gambling, we're looking at the gameplay, different games that they're playing. We've got like kind of hundreds and hundreds of different data points that we're looking at. And the way we do this at Mindway is we actually get human eyes on this. And when I say human eyes, I mean expert psychologists who have been working with people that have experienced gambling-related harm for many, many years. And we get them to rate it, and then we train the algorithm to replicate that expert human decision-making. So going back to your question, and what are the data points we're looking for, it's incredibly hard for me to give you a list. So we at Mindway are part of the SEN project to standardise the markers of harm, but I personally believe that you've got to take it way, way further than that and take it way past that, because there's certain things that would be sort of universally recognised as a potential marker. And I'm going to take late night play or play in the early hours of the morning as an example of this. So, yeah, universally recognised this is a marker of harm. However, all players are not equal, and all players that play at 3 a.m. are also not equal. And context is really, really important here. So what we do and what our algorithm is trained to do is, first up, we'll say, is there nightly play present? Yes or no? Yes, there is. But then, what does that nightly play look like? If you have a player who is playing in the evening, into the early hours of the morning, we're seeing no breaks, we're seeing that they clearly are playing up, during midweek. It's something that is probably impacting their lifestyle. We're seeing erratic deposit patterns in line with this nightly play, then we'd be incredibly worried about that player. But if we have a player that we see, yes, nightly play exists, but that nightly play is clustered around the weekend, it's It's not something that's impacting their day-to-day life. And every other marker that we track is stable. And also, by the way, they're betting on a sports event that happens outside of the time zone that they're in, then that is not a player we should be worried about. So in terms of detecting, I think we've moved on so far from just that kind of threshold, does this exist, does it not exist, and we have to apply context, and we have to look at how the different data points interact with one another. I know it doesn't totally answer your question, but I just think it's so much bigger than what are the markers, these are the 9 markers.
Alright, so it cleared the person coming from our party at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, hitting the slots machine. So he's cleared because he's like,
yeah.
Alright, good, so you guys know that. Stanislav.
Okay, just to add a few bits of structure around here, like whenever we take a look at problematic gamblers, first we'd like to structure and kind of categorize the players, say, in 4 categories. And in most research you'll find out that 45% of those will be social players. So they're just playing for fun. There's no risk whatsoever associated to the way they actually use the products. Then you'll have another 45, maybe 46% of the players who are regular. Maybe not once per day, but rather once per week. It could be once per month after the payday. This is the usual spike that we see in the activities. Depending on the country, it's like set on a different date, but it's usually the payday is like the highest number of bets. And then these people will represent, say, low to moderate risk. So we'll be taking a close look at them, but usually not undertaking any actions on the operator side. And then we got the remaining 9%. So out of those 9%, 7% would be the problem gamblers, the ones that, let's quote, would be still saved, unquote. And then you got the remaining 2% who are pathological and just forget about them because it's lost hope. And especially on a regulated market, they'll simply get banned very quickly if they didn't yet. And especially from operator perspective, it's important to have a healthy base of the regular players because these are the ones that will bring you the money. It doesn't mean that these are the small bettors. It could be high rollers, but regular. I mean, the problematic and pathological is like the hit and run or hit and get banned strategy. They play high and then they get banned for either a lifetime or, let's say, even a certain period, could be 1 year. Then, if you take a look at the research and literature, you will find dozens, like even the recent paper that I read was naming 60 different KPIs that belong to different groups of calculation based on the GGR, based on the play time, number of sessions, number of logins. And one thing that is really important, and what I see that usually appears as statistically significant in the models of the markers of harm you have mentioned, Paula. So based on the 9 DSM-5 criteria for gambling disorder, we are identifying features. Some of them are easy to quantify and some of them are really hard to measure. So then it's a matter of how to implement these features into the model. Just to give you an example, when we think about tolerance. So those DSM-5 criteria, we need to fulfill at least 4 of them in order, over the period of the last 12 months, in order to be regarded as a problematic gambler. And let's say somebody fulfills the criterion of tolerance. So it's like with alcohol. You need to drink more in order to have the same fun. So here, let's imagine somebody increases the stake size, goes from 1 to 5 euro or to even more. Let's say somebody, maybe they do not increase the average bet size, but they increase the bet amount. And you see that there's a gap between what they were doing before and now. So that would be one of the symptoms. We could have many others, like chasing losses. You see that the person has emptied their wallet. They top up the wallet within the session. So this is often regarded as a criterion that, hey, there might be a problem with this person. Because instead of quitting, they're just topping up, going down to 0 and topping up again. So this could be depending on the context and on the population of the players that you have within your online casino or your sports betting. These could be statistically significant, and this could be potentially a sign of a problem gambling. On the other hand, you will have other criteria that are hard to measure. Let's say ruining a relationship. So if you got a player and the place all the time, for example, in the online casino, and the wife wants to divorce. How can you measure that? It's not in the data, it's not in the platform. There's one way, you need to be creative, so there's one way. Actually, what you could do, you could track the customer service calls. If there's a call from his wife or husband, that, hey, can you please block his account, because we're gonna get divorced otherwise. So that's one of the possibilities. Another case is about the withdrawal symptoms. So I think usually if you refer to day-to-day life, you have people who smoke cigarettes. And I'm sure all of you got a friend who stopped smoking, and then whatever you tell to that person, they will easily get irritable, they'll shout at you or whatever. Yeah. Oh no, I just quit smoking, it's my second, third day. Don't approach me. And if you have this kind of withdrawal symptoms, how can we measure that online? I mean, the player is playing or not, whatever. But if somehow you capture that they call customer service, for example, for revoking the temporary ban or revoking the cool-off that they self-imposed, and they are abusive towards the staff, this could be another sign. So there's many easily tangible data points that you could incorporate, and just Paula, as you mentioned, you want to incorporate as many as you can, because at the end of the day, some of them will matter, some not, depends on the specific operator. Then if you want to be more creative, you need to dig deeper.
All right, thank you. So Paula, Mindway AI integrates behavior science with AI-driven solutions. So could you explain how combining these disciplines enhances the effectiveness of detecting the risky behavior, and what role human expertise plays alongside machine learning models in this process?
Yep, absolutely. So for me, I mean, I think the last panel that I watched was excellent, and I agreed with a lot of what those guys were saying in terms of the more data, the better, right? And it is about gaining as much data and then ensuring that your data scientists are able to analyze that properly. And this is where the science comes in. There's no point having an absolute ton of data if you don't know what you're looking for in that data. I agreed with a lot of what was said in that last panel. In fact, I was like, we just say, yeah, that applies, but for say for gambling, and we're done here, basically. But I agreed with a lot of what was said, and the key thing is actually understanding what the point of what we're doing is here. Why are we doing it? What are we looking to achieve? What are we actually looking for? And how do we know what we're looking for is correct? Because there is no ground truth in this, right? It's all something that is subjective and is opinion-based. So you look at the ways that people have tried to address this in the past, and you see people doing things like taking the PGSI scores and trying to extrapolate data. Well, that's great, but that's wholly reliant on people's self-reporting about their own feelings, their own experience. We all know as human beings that we do not tell the truth to ourselves, let alone to anybody else or a questionnaire that we're given. So I just give everybody the example of last time you went into the doctor and they asked you how many hours of exercise you do or how many units of alcohol you've drunk. How many of you guys actually told them the truth? I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up. I just want you to think about it, because we don't, right? We human beings are not set that way. So self-reporting, that's problematic. Another thing that we've seen people trying to do previously is trying to look at sort of lookalike behaviours of people that then go on to self-exclude. Well, that's problematic as well, because what kind of percentage of self-excluders actually do so because of problem gambling? It's actually pretty low. The main reason people self-exclude is because they can't find a button to close their account, or they're unhappy with customer services, or they've had a bad marketing experience. So that's not going to work either. So when we're trying to find this ground truth, we have to, again, dig a little bit deeper than these ideas. So what we found is that applying the science is really the best way to do it. There is one hell of a lot of research that exists out there on gambling behaviour. There's a hell of a lot of research that exists on different strategies that work in this sphere as well. A lot of data-driven research. That's very important. And keeping up to date on that scientific research is incredibly important. But a lot of those studies have been done in sort of lab environments and not necessarily in real world. There are some that are done with sort of real world gamblers, but not taking other variables into consideration like that kind of thing, which is why we believe at Mindway that it is so important to bring in the psychologists that are actually in practice, that are talking to people day in, day out, that are treating people day in, day out, that have actually experienced gambling-related harm and been through this journey, because that is the only way that you can get the insight. Now, I'm not saying you discount the research, you absolutely don't, that's built in as well, but you put that clinical experience in there, you layer in the whole idea of neuroscience and how the human brain works and what we know about how the human brain works, and what you then have is the closest thing, in my opinion, to the ground truth of what we're looking for. And for me, that's why the science is important, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you're never going to find it.
You cannot have all the data in the world.
Yeah.
So Stan, my question to you is about data governance and analytics, and what are the practical challenges in implementing it? Implementing machine learning models in existing Azure data environment, and let's talk about online casinos. So, what are the biggest challenges?
Okay, so if I would say one thing, that would be operationalization, so moving away from a proof of concept that's been developed, let's say on a limited set of data, perhaps using limited coverage of the market, so limited scope, number of records, limited features, running on the laptop of the data scientist who's been developing that, moving that towards a productionalized system that actually performs the training and the scoring of the models on the whole set of data, going up to the spin level, and parsing billions and not like thousands of records. So I think this part in many projects takes 4 or 5 times more than the building of the proof of concept, which can be done, if you have a good data scientist, sometimes it can be done in 1 day. Usually with the whole business process around, it's going to be, say, 1 month. But then building the whole engine that will support it and defining all the processes from IT perspective, it's like a whole activity which is called MLOps. And let's say it's a completely different stories. But whenever you have the system put in place, it doesn't matter how much data you treat, it's going to be efficient, and you have kind of a limitless scale. Today with cloud technologies, you can just upload whatever data you want, no matter what amounts, and it will hold. It's just a matter of clicking the toggle and pressing the button and adding more power that you have to pay for after. So this is one thing. The second aspect is data quality. Many times in systems you will find crap data, and you know the story of garbage in, garbage out, or you can put it in different words, but maybe not for the moment, or later. But
You'll just repeat it if you say anything. Be careful.
yeah, exactly. But I can give you one very nice example. I think it's pretty funny because we were modeling, it was churn early detection, but the methods are similar. It's just a matter of using different set of features for one of the operators, and we wanted to narrow down the scope of players so that we don't apply the same rules to everyone, but just to a specific set. And let's say you would imagine that typically when you calculate something which is called length of relationship, it should be a positive number. So let's say if I played today and I registered 1 month ago, the number of days between those 2 dates is 30. Yeah? The lowest you could get is 0. Because say I registered today and I played today. Right. Or not. I managed to find data with like -7, -14, so apparently people who played before they registered. And this is real data in the customer database. Of course, if you have this kind of quality of the data, you can build the fanciest model and it's doomed to fail because your data is of poor quality. And that's typically when we tell operators you have to build the data foundation. So there's different names for it. It could be data warehouse, data lake, lakehouse from a technological perspective. It kind of relieves 70% of what the data scientists do, because you ask a data scientist, hey, what actually takes you so much time? There's an algorithm which is ready, written in a package in Python. is just applying the ready algorithm. Well, it's not, because 70% of the time, that person will be cleaning the data, because there's some things that need to be kind of aligned, cleansed, etc. between systems. If you have the data foundation, the data is already cleaned, and you kind of relieve 70% of the burden of the data scientists, and they can concentrate on what really matters. So these are really important examples. Sometimes you might see also cases for companies that operate across multiple verticals, like Rank Group in UK. They're pretty known for that, and they use specific systems for identifying the golden record of the customer. So let's say if you have a company that has been growing by acquisition and buying different other companies, funding multiple brands, you might have a player who actually exists in all your different brands. You want to know that this is one player. You want to see the behavior across all your platforms, not only from player protection perspective, also from marketing. So this could serve both ends. And I think this is really the most important part, because I've seen already a few customers who wanted to jumpstart and move quickly to building predictive modeling, image recognition, and whatever. They didn't do the homework and this foundation, and then of course it was just money put in the waste.
All right, thank you. So, does everybody know who Batman is? Yeah, Bruce Wayne. All right, so he works at night, fighting crime, right? He gets home at 2 o'clock. He starts placing bets or plays the casino. You were saying that you can now filter out who is that person that is not like a gambling addict and is playing at night. So, but maybe the system will flag him as a potential risk. So how do you strike a balance between this early detection that might be sometimes faulty and maybe overreacting to maybe damage the gaming experience of the player?
So first up, if Batman was on my player base, I would want to perform an interaction anyway with him, because he's pretty cool. Yeah. So regardless of what his risk score was, I think I'd be giving him a call. But moving on from that, yeah, it's a very good question. And you do, of course, you get false negatives and false positives, but we need to move away from thinking about this in a binary, at risk, not at risk. We have 5 different tiers. You know, most operators, when looking at this, will understand that risk exists on a scale. Stan explained earlier the way that the distribution of risk works across the player database. I 100% agree with the numbers that he put forward. We hadn't discussed it in advance, but that falls in line exactly with what we often see. And often, one of the main concerns when I start working with operators is, what if all my players are in that very high risk group? I've never ever seen that once. Doesn't happen. You know, the distribution falls exactly in the pattern that Stan explained. You know, there's a bit of variation, but not to anything that would be sort of outside of that. So what we have to move away from thinking about is, what if somebody is identified as high risk and we're putting controls around their account that we shouldn't be putting around their account, because this guy's actually just a bit of a high roller and his deposits are high and that's why he's flagging. That's not going to happen with the sophisticated systems that we're talking about here. And the other bit of it is that if you are interacting with your players further down the scale while they're in that lower risk group, in a personalised manner, they're hopefully not going to find their way in that high risk category anyway.
All right, thank you. So this question is for both of you now. So when it comes to predictive models, how to personalize and adapt to early detection models to specific context of the legal framework in place on a specific market? Because not all markets have the same regulation. So Stan, you take it first, Paula, then.
Yeah.
Okay, if I may just jump quickly onto the previous one, because I think whenever we speak about false positives, I think we're all aligned. I think the coolest example is when somebody told me that I'm pregnant. I'm not going to be the typical example of the false positives, and even if we stay in the 0-1, so problematic player and player. Typically what operators do, they use a set of conditions. Let's say if the player has had a net loss of above 4,000 over the last month, or they played, let's say, more than 12 hours per day, or they connected multiple times, etc. So they have a set of conditions like that, and they already classify the players, let's say, to some categories, because they need to detect whom to potentially take any action to. They have a list of players who have been detected, and they need to decide, should I ban him, should I verify the documents, should I run an interview, or whatever. And we have measured that these kind of models, as a baseline, they have maybe 50% precision. This means that if you have 1,000 players who are problematic for real, you detect only 500, and the other 500, you just allow them to play. So these models, at the end of the day, they're useless. When we move towards predictive modeling, we have going from 50% to 85% precision, so this is already a great improvement, and then the operator has to decide. You come to a place that you're hitting a wall, and there's the trade-off. Do I want to be more cautious and to detect more problematic players at the expense of telling me that I'm pregnant, for example, and telling people that are false positives being overreactive towards them? Or shall I be happy with the result that I already have? And this is a business decision to be made by the operator themselves. And when it comes to how to customize these algorithms, I think the whole response lays not only within the legal framework of the operations, but actually every operator will have a different player base. Even here in Poland, when we got the license to sports betting company, one will have more players from Silesia, another from Pomerania, and another from Greater Poland, and they will exhibit different behaviors. And just or like in Switzerland, you have the German-speaking people, French-speaking, and Italian-speaking, and this will matter more than the difference between the specific cantons. So you kind of need to assess and train the models based on your own player base, and not only taking the best practices from the market, but it always has to be tailored for the needs of the specific operator, and that's the only way to go.
If I was an AI model, I would be telling people that, man, I need some rest, because all this training, you know. All right.
So what he said, basically, absolutely spot on. I think the only bit I would add to that is that we sort of consider that there's a number of different pillars that need to be taken into consideration. The first one is going to be the regulatory picture in that country. The Netherlands is a great example of this because they've just, as of October, brought in a new sort of load of regulatory frameworks and requirements around this, and we had to update for all of our customers in that jurisdiction. There's some pretty hard and fast rules about what people have to respond to and in what time limit, so that's got to be built in. But if you are not in the Netherlands, you are not going to want those hard and fast rules built in to your detection. They're not going to help you. So it's about the whole idea of one size doesn't fit all and flexibility. So yeah, the regulatory picture. The next bit is actually understanding what it's like to be an operator, the job they do, the workflows, the considerations they have on a day-to-day basis, and making sure that your solution is actually tailored to that as well and fits with those workflows. And then the third bit is obviously the algorithm itself and making sure that you are identifying the right players. And exactly as Stan said, you see differences in cultural differences, you see generational differences, you see differences in gender, and women, you know, gamble differently to men often. You see differences that are related to different gambling verticals as well. So all of that needs to be built in, and that's why I would always say that no two of my customers have a game scanner that is identical. They couldn't.
Right. I remember when we were doing affiliate marketing in 2008, we had a huge bonus because one 69-year-old lady in the UK deposited £8,000 for bingo. So yeah, can you take that?
Bingo's huge in the UK, we love it.
All right, so guys, Do you have any questions for Paula or Stan? No?
We've either been really clear or really confusing.
Yeah.
Don't know which.
Probably don't know what it is. They don't care about this concept. They say that spin, leave the problems behind. Alright guys, so thank you so much for joining us. We will have a 45 minutes lunch break in the room, the other room where the loud people are. And we will be back after that with 3 more sessions, and that's it for today then. Alright, so have a good meal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.